Oh, thanks, Mary.
Calling to order. Our study session for May 12th. Oh my, it's my brother's birthday. May 12th.
Too light.
26.
We'll dedicate the meeting to it. Okay.
And we only have one thing on the agenda. Well, we have council reports too. But the only item staff presenting on our agenda tonight is Oregon Moderate Income Revolving Loan Program. So,
Thanks, Mary.
you're
Oh, no, did you want to do?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Touch this? You want to? Josie Leo, Assistant City Manager. I'm here with our Development Project Manager, Nancy Bird. As you know, we've been talking about MIRL for several months now. This will be council's third discussion of the body discussing it together. And if you recall back in the March 17th meeting, this is essentially a continuation of that discussion that y'all started. That was directed to receive a number of questions from our council members and then provide responses to the questions as best we could through talking to the state as well as our neighboring jurisdictions and those that you knew were pursuing the MIRL program, have pursued the MIRL program, or thinking about it. So I can say pretty strongly and with a lot of confidence that we, both Mandy and myself together, are probably one of the two most informed people about what's going on in the state of MIRL. Really, we've talked, if you see the list in the staff report of the number of jurisdictions we've talked to, we have not been taking any of this lightly. We're just saying our opinions based on nothing. We have followed up with our thoughts and concerns and tried to give you answers to your questions. So with that, I know we have a presentation that looks like it's up there, but really this is about going over the questions. So if you would like, we could go, I don't know if it's necessary. This could be just go right back into discussion. We can go through the questions one by one with you all, or we can just play by ear. If you have questions about some questions and answers, we can talk about specifics. It's up to you and how you would like to have those discussions.
Are you saying the presentation is pitched as questions one by one, or?
I would ask Nikki to pull up the staff report. We can go through the matrix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way, we can. So kind of.
I don't know. What do people think? Do we need to go through the answers one by one, or people feel pretty comfortable with them? And we do have a printout, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need to go one by one, but I do have some general questions. Like some of the questions was only answered by staff. Is there a reason why OHCS didn't answer those questions?
Like which one? I'd say most of these questions that
Or is it just from
we've been talking to OHCS since for months now. So a lot of the staff responses are based on
like the third one? Is this a staff response? Does that have a OHCS response? So I was just curious, like some of them.
Well, because that's about the county. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I'll say that if you have questions about specific answers, where those came from, and how those came to be, we can go into those. But none of them are just like staff's opinion. Those are typically built from talking to OHCS within this last round, based on the questions that you gave us, or in previous discussions, because we've been in contact with them for months. And also, some of the responses are reflective of our conversations with other SJs, sponsoring jurisdictions that have either done the program and had their own experience with OHCS, or given us their experience with working through the program as far as they have. So, yeah, hopefully that helps answer your question, Councilor.
I think one of the things that jumped out at me most, and maybe you can shed a little more light, is the fact that Tillamook, which is the only jurisdiction that was supposedly leading the charge, is on hold. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So thanks to Mandy, we got finally to connect with Tillamook County last Friday. So very recent. And we, similar to you, and probably you also heard that C4 last Thursday from OHCS, where this Tillamook County was the one that was furthest out front. They're the one that's talked about this when it comes to MIRL. Our discussion with their community development director, who was also the building official and oversees their housing vision. Basically, they created a resolution, so they don't have this yet. They created a resolution, and it gets more complicated when I talk about it. But essentially, if you enact a resolution, you can accept projects. But you kind of need an ordinance to also figure out what the project criteria is that you want to judge those projects on. So they got into this, they're currently in this cyclone of, they have a resolution, they've already accepted a project. Now they're kind of backpedaling to go, oh, we need to do an originating ordinance to basically clarify what we want the program to really be, what we want the criteria to be. And also, they have a number of questions that have not been answered, both from the county assessor as well as from their community development director about some liability issues when it comes to maintenance season.
And if it's okay for me to say, Joseph,
Yeah.
they actually provided the staff report that their staff sent to their council. Explaining the reason for the pause, and we have printouts of that we can provide to you as well. Public record, so I think we should hand those out.
Yeah, literally, this is all just happened recently, so it's all brand new. We had literally thought in that conversation that we're gonna hear a lot more like, oh yeah, you know, keep going, here's the check, we've done this check, we've done this IGA, we've got this question figured out, but it was the complete opposite.
It's interesting because you mentioned C4 and that House President and I were both at C4. Anybody else? I don't know. You were there, yeah, that's what I thought. They did mention Tillamook as the lead. When they were asked about who was doing it, Tillamook was kind of the only answer they gave. Whereas when Mark Gamble spoke to us in January, he had met with them and he had said they told them 5 or 6 or 7. We were one of 7 or 8 jurisdictions that were looking into it. So
That being Tillamook or them being the state?
them being OHCS, yeah, them being OHCS had told Rep. Gamba that there were 7 or 8 jurisdictions looking at it. But they included us and we knew we were in a very preliminary state. So I mean, that doesn't speak well for the uptake of the program that had gone from January. There's really only still, we're a year in. But really, so. And
I
that one
think-
is on hold.
Coos Bay has been originating.
Or
Coos Bay is past an originating, that's just my understanding. They're still working through, you pass an originating ordinance, you negotiate your IJs with the county assessor. And you establish your project criteria, your application process, work with, yes, that. My understanding is Coos Bay is kind of still in that, we're setting up a new program phase.
Exactly, because they have adopted an originating ordinance, it's essentially the template. Now they're trying to figure out what their criteria is gonna be, really who's gonna implement it. So I think I might have mentioned, I don't know if it was just to you, Mayor, or to council at large, but the Coos Bay is trying to build a consortium. Based on their CDD business development, it's like kind of like an SBDC of sorts out there. They do a lot of loan products, a lot of underwriting, so they're working with them as well as a gentleman by the name of Steve Brooks, who's based in Portland, who I've worked with in the past, who's done some finance review and some, he's kind of a finance increment, just a finance person in general, who's also part of that consortium. So they're trying to create this group of professionals, technical experts that cities can potentially contract with to implement our program. It's if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I mean, just to tie on that, the Coos Bay conversations that we had have the same theme as the Tillamook conversation that's in this memo. So the reason Coos Bay is trying to work with this consortium is because of the capacity and risk concerns.
I would just, I think this is a long staff report, but it's that second page where. It's gonna sound a lot like refrains you might have heard from your own staff. County staff do not have the resources available to complete the comprehensive review. And that makes us think of project specific and all this is their recommendation should not be considered until OHCS has addressed the county's questions and concerns related to development. So I think there's a
Yeah.
And on the last page, numbers 1 through 5 that are listed there, that's when they're letting the county to sign. That's where it was a big red flag for Tillamook County. Not able to sign, saying that they don't have the expertise or staff to do those all of those 5 things. To be able to sign that, and they thought that was gonna be what OHCS would do once OHCS received the application. But that wasn't the case.
Can you mentioned in some of the responses, the Hood River model, that's not, we're kind of talking about compliance for profit developers. Talk about what. So is Hood River doing MIRL, or what is the Hood River model and how does that look different for nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if you look on your answers to questions, the attachment, question number 12. It's gonna be a good place to look, but, so Mandy and I talked to whoever, and I forget even how we found out they were doing a originating ordinance. So they adopted an originating ordinance. And they did some things that we thought were, like, if we were going to move forward with it, made some sense to us. They have similar capacity issues, liability concerns. And so they wrote in their originating ordinance, they basically, in their compliance plan, that they would only receive projects that were from nonprofit developers, so that like YSDs would send a bill in. And that awardees would basically do self-compliance, and that's really, it kind of goes hand in hand if you're a nonprofit development. Affordable housing developers typically have that built in because of the finance portfolio that they have, or the finance stack that they have is usually it's like there's HUD funds which require compliance and verification, so it kind of just happens. And then the final piece is that they also, instead of like a lump sum grant, the last number 3 on response 12 in the Hood River model is that they're doing something pretty smart when it comes to liability defense, releasing funds as the project hits certain milestones. It's very similar to construction. So I got some of those, and we asked like, did you get pushback? Of course, yes. They're just trying, they're like throwing stuff at the wall and it seems to be working
So OHCS approved this
so far.
version.
Yeah.
Well, because, so at OHCS, we had an LOC land use committee. OHCS was there, we talked about that. And they kept, that's the thing, they kept, because I asked them like, hey, what does is there any guidelines to compliance? What does that look like? Because you just say compliance over and over. And they said, well, that's the thing, it's flexibility. It's so that, cities have the flexibility to figure out what they want their compliance to look like. So I'm not surprised that that is okay, because there really isn't, there's just a word.
Yeah.
Right, there's no they don't define it in any way. And they tout that to the flexibility that the program has in allowing cities to figure that out on their own. And I'm not gonna lie, I do like limiting it to nonprofits, to be honest with you. And because again, they're the only ones that can do the compliance. No for-profit developers gonna do that. They're gonna, wow, you're gonna make them on their portfolios be responsible for 30 years of compliance. Their investors are gonna be like, oh, I want that. But nonprofits, I can see doing that. But the other issue is, some of the word that worries me, like it's mentioned a lot, is default. That's the other question I asked OHCS was like, since this is a loan with the state, city's going into an actual loan with the state, if we default due to somebody going into foreclosure, how does that affect the city's credit rating? They didn't have an answer. They didn't really know. They were like, we're not really sure. So I don't know if that's a question we can ask Michael. You might have some information, but I would really like to know what that impact is. And they did say that there's things we can work with, and together you can work it out with, once the property goes into foreclosure, once it's sold, everybody gets paid. It's like, yeah, that's great, but sometimes foreclosures can take 2-3 years. So
Process.
we're on the hook for those 3 years. So something, I don't know if this is something we can do, but one of the things I would ask is that if we were okay with nonprofits doing this, then I would ask that the nonprofit have a contingency for at least 1 year in the event that a house doesn't go to foreclosure, so they can make sure that they can pay that payment. So we don't go into default, and that essentially gives us basically 2 years to figure out what to do with the property. Now that doesn't satisfy what happens on the back end legally, right? But at least that does put us in a better position to where we're not going into default right off the bat. It is a once a year payment that we make to the state, so they're not getting paid up front.
Wouldn't that also rule out a lot of nonprofits though, to have that much
That's
available as contingency, because they have to rely on private
that's
funders.
potentially, but. I mean, risking default is probably a lot worse.
Well, I will
If
tell
we
you,
were to understand,
Yeah,
that's
so
just something,
I totally get that.
that's where I see the two coming
I'm
together.
just saying that, like, that would amp up their risk at that point, such to the point where perhaps we wouldn't have nonprofits who would want.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I hear your concern.
so when we had the meeting, last week, and they were here with at C4. Council President Anderson posed a question to OHSC. And specifically, it was about default, as I remember. And we kind of got this same wishy-washy answer about, well, we'll work with you and we'll do this and we'll try to figure it out. But the words that would not cross their lips was the city will owe the state. They just can't get that across. They did not say that. They just won't say it. But that's a fact. And so it doesn't give me a lot of comfort when they won't even recognize what the cities see as a potential problem. They just kind of give this, mealy mouthed answer.
Yeah.
Did you get the same impression?
Mealy mouthed answer might not be the words I use, but I do think
Well,
that like.
give me your
I think it's hard, I mean, when OHTS is on the record talking about the financial liability and compliance pieces, they give lawyerly answers that kind of don't commit to any path. My sense in talking to them is that the state would look at opportunities for us to cure this and would try and work with us, but at the end of the day, it's cities that are on the hook for paying these payments.
They won't even say that, though. Megan would not even say that. I would welcome a larger answer like that. But she didn't. I would just like for them to say the words, the city's gonna owe the money. Just like some simple, plain English.
Yeah, as I mentioned in our previous conversation on March 17th. In preparation that I kind of made some of this conversation about the way it's happening is. I don't know that even the answers that we find or the answers we give from OCS will be satisfactory, like there's just a lot of ambiguity, there's lots of vagueness, there's trust. There's a lot of things that you kind of just, it's untested waters. And so I think Hood River, for example, is like, I think they're, sounds of it, and we'll see, I mean, they just didn't originate wordings, we'll see if they keep. Or where they go, oh, wait a second, step back, I can see that happen. But they're, from our conversation with them, they put, like, they're originating ordinance in a way that makes some sense for them. And I think they also like coaching us like.
Like, we'll see.
Yeah, like, there doesn't seem to be, I think they kind of understand, like, there's some risk here and.
Do they have a developer who's wanting to do it?
Here they.
They made a additional nonprofit, they have a nonprofit developer
I don't
that's.
know if it's a nonprofit.
I don't remember.
I don't know. I thought they did have a developer, it seems like every city we talk to has a developer that's kind of asking about it, it's kind of this conversation.
I know in Eugene, Dev Northwest has been working with their council to try and it's passed, so. Dev Northwest has done projects in Milwaukie, they're interested there. We live in land and there, I mean. Eugene has like a clear project they're pushing forward, Lebanon Land doesn't have something like that, they're working in another city, but
Who does this?
that. Lebanon Land,
Lebanon Land.
That's a land trust.
Oh, okay.
Joseph, so obviously I'm trying to kind of think about the other tools in our toolkit like CET. And a MIRL that's designed by the Hood River model. And kind of putting myself in the shoes of a nonprofit. Why one might be more or less attractive than the other. Now, obviously, the CET is limited by what's in the fund, and in this case, we'd be able to the city would be able to tap into the state pool, but can you speak at all to like, with Dev Northwest, who's doing a project funded through us through CET, what would be advantageous or not? Like, is this really adding much to the toolkit if we already have the CET program is basically what I'm.
Yeah, I would say yes, Because like, as you said, the CET only has so much money, right, it's just that, it's the fund, so this is a grant. This is a loan to us, but a grant to them, so it's money that we don't have, but it's another resource, I would say, it's just another piece of the stack,
And another thing to administrate.
absolutely, yes.
So it's been weird to me through this whole process to be driven to what is clearly a problem-linked program or one project that I think we'd all like to see happen. You know, it's a good project, building some new, you know, building some townhomes at a price point that's more affordable to people. But as you could see from some of my many unanswered questions.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, and there, yeah, sorry, I'll apologize on record. Because we started.
It's a fair point.
We-
Those are the ones tomorrow.
We started going down.
I was taking other solutions, like local improvement district to build their street improvements, since the state, I will say, I think you told me at LOC,
Question 7 through 10.
the, all the cities, and I hear this at all the mayors say, all this, and it was the big ask of the MOC this year was infrastructure money for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Give us money to build out the roads and build out the utilities, and we can build housing. And the state, you know, had budget constraints and watered that way down from the $40 million ask to a $10 million pool. You know, would we be competitive with our little project against some of the places that have urban growth boundary and more potential to build more houses with that funding? I don't know. You know, there's a question there. But I mean, I just wanted to think beyond MIRL to how we could, you know, what other tools we might have to help this one project go forward. And it's clear to me from your answers on this, that even if we came back on June 2nd and the county said, yes, we will do your compliance, and we said, okay, we're gonna do MIRL, it's gonna be many, many months, and that congregation has a timeline, right? So I guess I'm just expressing my frustration. I don't feel like this is a good tool for what they're trying to do. I don't feel like it's a good use of our time to try and twist and turn into this project, this program, for that one project. But I would like to find a way to help that project.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, two things. I'm talking to Coos Bay, who's the first city in the state to adopt, at least the original ordinance. They were pretty blunt, like, just for expectation setting, say 6 to 9 months at least. That's where, like, after that, which the originating ordinance in the IGAs kind of lined up. They were still working on IGAs. Actually, the last time we talked to them, which was in April, I want to say.
Yep.
So they were still waiting, and they had adopted, I think, back in September. So there's that whole piece, so you're right, like, there's still a lot of time, even after the original ordinance gets updated, that you actually can start receiving applications. The second piece is I told the developer that's associated with the church on that wood, I told them in my conversations that we would happy to support and help entertain other funding sources that make sense for us. To our credit, and I'll say that we don't just say no, like there's nothing we can do. We just did this with Hillside again. They came to us for phase 2. We're like, hey, there's this loan out there, we'd love to go after, or grant out there, we'd love to go after. But it needs to be sponsored by your station. Will you guys sponsor? I said yes. So it's through Business Oregon. We're out there. You guys all remember this? He actually said yes to go after it. And we asked for $3 million. We just were awarded 1.5 a few days ago, a letter. So the reason we said yes to this is because the administrative burden is so much lower. And we're working with Development West, who's also working with Housing Authority, who also regulates these. Related stuff, get them something in place. yeah, who does this administration piece. But we can do pass-through grants, that's something that we feel pretty comfortable with, so. I say that because it's not for lack of wanting to try to find other, but also it's not up to us to. Find a tool that works for them to be helpful if they, for other things that are interested, they're happy to entertain these, I guess.
Did they show any interest?
Um,
Did their congregation show any interest?
I think that answers the question.
Maybe I can take stab at it.
Yeah,
We don't have dedicated housing staff. So when folks come to meet with us, they meet with the two people you see here, and they are always happy to be thought partners and bounce ideas off it. But we also don't have time to be going out there and pursuing funding strategies for every project. And we can't do that on a just kind of first come through the door effort. So in this case, I think there was an expression of a willingness if opportunities were to arise to, as Joseph just pointed out with the hillside, take that exact same approach. We love to try to get to yes, but we can't supply, we just don't have the capacity or the expertise to supply the answers. And I don't believe in that case,
Well, the church faces the same situation we do. They don't have the expertise to go out and get grants. Right? So I'm not surprised. I'm just asking the question. Was there any interest?
I've never, and also I've never talked to church or the property owner.
Okay.
I want to talk to the developers that are interested.
Okay.
I think about this a little differently. I know there is one development that we can look at, but I think MIRL is also a valuable tool. In talking with some affordable developers to increase the amount of capital that's available for the funding staff. And the fact that the state has relatively untapped dollars here, if those dollars could come to Milwaukie to build affordable housing, that's that. As long as we can feel secure in our financial standing and accepting a project and feel like we have the safeguards in place, especially with a nonprofit developer to be able to do that. I also see there being real benefit. I mean, we've all bemoaned the fact that we have less control over our land use process than we have in the past. And these are dollars that we can use to be able to negotiate with developers to try and see different things in our developments. And I think there are so few options to really have developers come to ask us, asking for things that we would like to see, us having the leverage to make an ask that listen to. I see this as a potential tool to be able to change the housing. And granted, I don't think that I hear very clearly from our staff that we don't have the capacity to do this if we are the ones administering the affordability program. It seems like Hood River has put forward an alternative path to consider for nonprofits who are able to do this on their own. I also think that in terms of the liability concerns, any project can come forward to us and apply. We're not obligated to take on the project. If we feel there's undue financial risk in any project, we look at their capital stack they've approved so far, we look at their cash on hand or the reserves or what have you, we feel we're not in a safe spot as a city, we want to accept the program. But having this as a potential for nonprofits to be able to build a capital stack makes sense.
I would love to do it. I just always get back to the issue of resources, expertise, capacity. And so, we talked about the county, we talked about nonprofits. I'm certainly willing to, to pursue those. But I don't think that the issue of risk is always handled in the upfront. I mean, I think the risk exists through the duration of the project, duration of the term, whether it's 10 years or 30 years or whatever. I think that risk is always there. And I'm not sure that anyone is going to come away from this process with a real good feeling that, they've mitigated that sort of long-term risk, because I think it's there. And I mean, it's just a fact of life that that mortgages go into delinquency and may eventually go into foreclosure. And I don't think that that's a abstract concern, because I actually looked at the list. So if you, the Federal Reserve has information on this, and basically, mortgages go into delinquency. Gone, on average, have gone into delinquency 5% since 1979. Okay. And if you throw in something like the Great Recession, it's like 11%. So those risks are there, and I'm not sure that there will ever be an answer for that, except that someone accepts that risk. And I'm just asking myself, should we accept that risk? Because I don't know that there's a insurance product out there. I don't think there is an insurance product. That's one of my questions. Is that the insurance product that covers that? So if you really want to address the risk, it kind of gets back to what Adam was talking about earlier. You'd say, well, you bump up the reserves. Well, that's reserves are hard to pinpoint even where we are right now. We've had this discussion in the last budget meeting. So I just don't think that even when you set up the program, you can mitigate that sort of life cycle risk.
I think that makes sense. I think it's also, if we're talking about a unit by unit foreclosure, I went through our county assessors to look at like the increment for middle housing bill. Because I think some of these projects with housing, what's the increment that the city itself is getting on these projects? And on average for our middle housing, it's about $900 a year that the city gets in interest. If you take 5% of homes over the state loan project we've had described to us, for 44 units, that's about 2 foreclosures a year that are happening. And if you multiply that by 950, even if we bump it up to 1,500, assume that school district and other districts are losing money. That's about $3,000 in liability that the city would have a year for projects going into foreclosure to cover the cost of that. I guess I throw that out just as napkin, but I'm curious how much risk we're actually talking about, or what the scale of that risk is.
Well, I don't know that you can limit that liability to just that tax income, can you?
Isn't it whatever the loan was?
So
It's whatever
what
the
you're
loan
paying
was.
each year is the increment. The way the loan is structured is it's
Yeah,
10 years times however much the increment is. And so your yearly payment is whatever the increment is. And so you would say for any individual unit, if a house were to foreclose in this development, they would not be paying their increment to us in that year. That increment, like we talked about, might come later on down the line of the foreclosure process. That's not money that we have right away. That's money that we have later on. And so we have to cover the cost of the increment for that year. That is the financial risk that we're talking about. And my sense is, if we're talking on a 44 unit project about 2 units being foreclosed a year at that 5% rate, that's about $3,000 a year in liability.
Well, how does the loan get paid? I mean, this is not money we're talking about.
Well, the other I guess he's saying the other 42 are paying, right?
Yeah.
So it's only those 2 in default, but I think the bigger question is default before they're built.
That's what I was gonna say was, I'm not worried about the amount. I think that's manageable, and I kind of was thinking with the reserves for a nonprofit. It's the default, because I mean, you miss a credit card payment, no matter what your payment is, that's a 30-day delay, your credit goes down. So I'm worried about the impact that it may have on our credit rating. I was disappointed to not get an answer at HCS today in this meeting. So I was really hoping they had an answer like, no, it's not, because it's not necessarily a loan in that manner. But all they said is like, we'll help you, but they didn't, especially with our budget and our constraints right now, we really need to take that seriously. If we go into default, how that impacts on rating in the city. It's a big deal. That's more than what the impact of that is greater than the amount that we're talking about. Because I like the Hood River setup. I like how they put that together. I like limiting it to nonprofits because they can do the compliances. And I like the program in the sense that it's the only way we can kind of dictate what gets built in our communities. But I don't like how it's put together, and the default is really worrying me. I was really hoping that we would get an answer from OHCS, because every city, majority of it is on there. It's just not what we expected, so I'm hoping that might change.
Ask a question of clarification. The legislation is pretty explicitly clear about what happens. So are you saying that OHCS is interpreting that differently in terms of like the kit that they've put together for jurisdictions, or, I mean,
They were just very vague, they didn't really have a response, that was the thing, it was more like, well, you'd be in default, but we have mechanisms to help with that, and once the property goes into foreclosure and then it's sold, then everybody gets repaid, but they didn't answer how that impact, they didn't really, and I don't blame them because they're not the legal people.
Yeah.
But they didn't really, it didn't clarify what that, how that
Yeah.
impacts our credit, because the state doesn't determine our rating.
right?
So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
exactly.
worried
So
about.
that's the part that's murky for me,
Right.
is that this would be a loan with the state, not with a bank. But the legislative guidance or the guidance through the state, is still calling for underwriting support. I don't know what that really consists of,
I'm still treating it like a loan.
Yeah.
It's the thing.
but they're. So I don't know the extent to which it would hurt our rating, but everything that I know about how the state operates or how jurisdictions operates would led me to believe that it would most certainly have an impact, that the state probably has to get some type of, authority, the same way that a bank would. And so if the legislation is very, very clear that yes, we're on the hook to repay this money, I don't see how in any of the guides that the state has put together that has changed.
Yeah.
Am I just missing something?
And I'd be happy to talk to Mike, but I don't think he'll have a clearer answer. I think we'd have the same assumptions that you're saying.
So now you're asking.
Well, but it is concerning.
It is, it's very.
That they're not able to say
Right,
definitively, you can find that in, whatever, section 33, paragraph, whatever, in the legislation.
well, then they pointed to because I asked about if somebody was, well, actually, I didn't even ask that question, Pineville's the manager asked. In the event of somebody purchasing a home and then renting it out to someone at market rate, how do you prevent that? And again, they were like, well, there's some legal things in the legislation, but again, it's on the sponsor jurisdiction to figure that out, and it's like, how would we figure that? I don't even, we were like, everybody on there was like, well, how are we supposed to figure that out? What are we supposed to do to figure that out? That's why, the nonprofit route would be the only solution, but then again, it's still hung up on the default.
I think the default only comes into play if we can't make the payment for that year to the state. And I think that's where we would have to not rent a loan if we don't feel comfortable that we could make a payment to avoid default. I mean, is there another way that you can avoid that, or?
How can you determine that at the start of the program?
Say that again, or what do you mean?
Well, I mean, you said, repeat what you said.
I think what Councilor Koster-Body is describing, if we were to default on the loan, it assumes that we couldn't make that annual payment to the state that they are owed. And so I think that if we were ever to consider a project, we should not go forward unless we felt confident that we could find some way to make that payment.
Well, I'm just giving you information that all the banks in the country who are pretty good at this can't get it right 100% of the time. Okay, because they have a 5% default rate.
I'm not saying to perfectly predict it, I'm saying, is there some contingency that we could have to protect us from that? Could we set aside CET funds to say, the liability that we have every year is $50,000, that's the payment we're making to the state. If we set aside $50,000 of CET fund, is that some assurance that we could be able to pay back the state if there were something?
So I guess actually this conversation has raised a new question in my mind. I guess I've assumed that we're not making a payment to the state, the tax assessor is making a payment to the state. But then if there's defaults, we get notified by the tax assessor? I mean, what's happening? What is that system?
I guess that's the idea you work out with the tax assessor.
I guess
I don't
that's-
know if anyone's gotten to that point yet.
It is another concern that we've heard from the tax assessors that they don't usually act as collections.
That's there's a new program for them. I'll be interested to see what how the county, you know, as they begin this journey. And what type of conversation they have.
Yeah, I think their June 2nd conversation should be enlightening.
OHCS says, this is their response to one of my questions. Very generally, the sponsoring jurisdiction would work with the county tax office to do notification and attempt to cure a late payment prior to moving to default delinquency. And so
Which
it
number
seems
is that?
like question 15A. So it seems like there would be, like our staff were saying, as we're making these IGAs with the assessor, we create some type of process. And there would be some, in our IGA with OHCS, some process we set up to cure a failed payment or a foreclosure, or for some reason the payment wasn't made. But this is where I was saying, if there is an opportunity to cure, if we had funds to cure, that helps mitigate some of the liability. If we don't have funds to cure, then we do take on the liability and we put the city in that position. So I'm kind of wondering, are there ways that we could use CET funds or other funds to be able to have some type of contingency to cure our MIRL obligation on a meaningful basis, if that was so.
So that's a similar model that Eugene and the River have expressed, that contingency or reserve. But it
Well,
also
it's the same thing I mentioned earlier, they're just putting in a reserve rather than using CET funds, but you know, they're putting it away for the rainy day.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Well, and yeah,
Okay, so can you do that?
We can do whatever we want with our reserve. I mean, we can add more dollars to take over this liability. I would say that we've had some interesting conversations about. Recently.
Well, I'm saying, I'm saying of CET funds, can you use CET funds?
Yeah, I think the color of money doesn't matter, but CET funds are for affordable housing, so loans for affordable housing. Certainly, so.
But I'm sorry, were you saying in the event that one payment can't be made, or in the event that the project cannot move forward and we are on the hook for all the money? Then you're proposing that we just pay the annual payment every year until all the money is paid.
Well, I think it depends on, there are two risk scenarios that have been described here. One is after sometime later in the project, after it's already been built, there's a failure to repay. I think it is much easier to have see for that plan. The other is kind of what the mayor was looking to. If you default during construction, there's a larger obligation. I think Code River has different ways that they go about this by slowly doling out the funds, not giving them all at once by saying, we're gonna tranche this. I think you have to structure the contingency to allow for, at any time you're doing the tranche funds, being able to cover the funds that you're distributing out, if that makes sense.
I appreciate the creativity of the suggestion, and I. You know, that's why I'm asking for more clarification around it, because the risky part for me in this proposal is that we're trying to retrofit for a system that doesn't exist at our municipal level. We're trying to retrofit this idea to be able to fit something that the county isn't doing and that the state isn't handling themselves, which is why probably the alliance of cities, or the consortium of cities, I mean, that's cities working together to do something on a scale that they can't do individually. So on a system level, it would make a lot more sense for the county to do this, or the state to actually just make the change and not create a pilot program obligating a small amount of funds to ask cities to try doing it instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know what they did with the counties though?
Which pieces don't make sense to me?
I guess I'm confused. Are you talking about, when you said the county doing this, are you talking about the county assuming the liability for the repayment, or is this the county doing the?
I'm talking about the county being a much larger jurisdiction, having they're self-insured.
Yeah.
They have a housing program.
Yeah.
They have a land use division.
Yeah.
they have a lot more capacity than we as an individual jurisdiction do. To take some guidance from the state and implement it for our region. And I would say that it would make me feel, I feel like the risk would be mitigated if they were doing it at a scale that gave some type of consistency across all of the jurisdictions in Clackamas County, instead of individual jurisdictions being asked to implement something which could feasibly look different in every single jurisdiction.
I don't know if this answers the question, but question 21 is one that I posed, and basically it was, can the county serve as the sponsoring jurisdiction? And the answer from the state was no.
And they can be a sponsoring jurisdiction, but if they get the money, it can only be spent on unincorporated areas.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
they did a good one.
this was not in the manual, and this is that actually a couple of other cities were operating on a similar assumption that the county could be managed and cover the whole county. But yeah, we verified that, no, that's not the case. However, I will say the caveat in that, I'm talking with housing authority staff, is that if for some reason Clackamas County adopts their own MIRL, then they would consider opening up capacity to assist other cities that are also becoming SJs to administrate.
And capacity would be also consistency of rulemaking,
That's a good question.
Let's hope.
Yeah. That's a good question.
okay? And but yet, if we take on the implementation of our own MIRL, don't we still have to have an agreement with the county?
Yes, yeah, because the assessor is the.
Yeah.
Entity that collects and pays back the loan.
And what, sorry, changing gears now. Can you explain again the implications if we were to implement this and a project came about in the URA? What would happen? Because there are some specifics around URA areas, right?
This was the most recent change that they made in the legislature, so they said, what had happened before is it was ineligible to do it in a URA district.
Okay.
You're now able to repay the payment through or repay the amount due through other revenue sources. So you can choose to property taxes, so you could either, there are two ways you could repay, one is working with the assessor to do the automatic property tax things, and you can use to repay the loan. The other is the city can find some other ways to pay it, and they leave it very broad, the city can choose what they want. The implication would be your TIP district pays through them.
Use
But that is,
Yeah.
that is.
They call it
a
multi-
property tax.
They call it alternative funding
You
source.
could do something else, but yeah.
So just,
Yeah.
what other funding exists
I
in
mean,
a
if
URA?
you were to, I'm saying like, if you wanted to use general fund dollars, you could choose to pay that with general fund dollars. They don't specify the type, but it most likely would be, you use your TIP dollars or your URA dollars.
I think that just goes back to where I feel really nervous about being creative around reserve or a contingency fund, because we might be on the hook for decades. Repaying, albeit maybe a small amount every single year, but that's taxpayer money for a project that might never come to fruition.
And it begs the question, you're socking away those reserves in your CET, why not just give that CET as a grant that we administer?
That's a good point.
I think what I would say this is, so one, the length of the loan can only be 10 years, that's the length that you can do a loan for. And the max amount of a loan is your increment times 10 years. I would say the reason why you wouldn't use CET dollars alone or just give it CET if you have a reserve, because you're able to leverage the size of the reserve with the amount of capital you can pull down. I think you can use a smaller amount of reserve dollars to be able to effectively pull down more dollars from the state. And so the amount of capital that we're able to provide to developers would be larger. And I think you have to structure the reserve. I mean, you would have to structure a reserve around the tranche payments that we do, that is the highest amount the loan is at any one point, and highest liability to come.
So you're saying use CET funds to bring in additional larger pots of loan funds? Is that
Like they say, using CET as your debt service for the MIRL loan
And it's debt service that you potentially have to use.
only.
But isn't that an opportunity cost because you've lost control of the CET that you set aside?
I think the way I would describe it is the take Hood River's example. The point when they're at maximum risk of default is when Hood River may flip to 15B. 15A. 15% final inspection is when they give the final loan amount. So that's 85% of the loan total is when they're at the maximum potential for something to go wrong. You owe 85% of the units going to default or stuff like that. There's still a foreclosure process that happened there. There's still some payment down the line that we could receive, but we would have to in a year start making payments for the loan that we had awarded 85% of. And so by having that 85% in some type of reserve, you're able to pay off the total amount of the loan that we have. But after that 85%, your liability is far less because the project has already been built. It has intrinsic value, so it goes in foreclosure. You're being able to reap the value of the sale when you sell the foreclosed asset that has some value more than just an undeveloped parcel or a half developed parcel. And so your liability is less. But that 85% amount of the total loan grant is what is the highest potential payment that you have to make.
Well,
Does that make sense?
listen, yeah, I understand all that, but the question I ask is, and the reason I call it an opportunity cost is like, I would look at it as like, okay, you're gonna make a decision about how you're gonna use your CET funds, okay? So the question I would ask is, say, okay, well, we use CET funds for affordable housing. So would you rather use CET funds for Sparrow, or would you rather use it for MIRL? Is that a good question for the city to ask itself?
I think the one difference that I would say is you need that 85% at one time, and it's only when that one project is going through. From then on out, you don't need a full 85% to be able to cover the liability of the loan. You need to be able to cover the risk of foreclosure, which is going to be far less than 85% of the loan value at one time. And so you're able to, by setting aside some contingency, hold down effectively far more dollars than just 85%.
Counselor, I think this was sort of the question I was posing to Joseph. I was doing it more from the perspective of the affordable housing nonprofit developer, but I think from the city seat or from your seat, you might want to ask, like, Council President's correct. MIRL allows you to leverage a much bigger pool of money than our CET accrues slow, and it's not that huge. So MIRL opens up more doors, but it adds, I would argue, significant administrative burden, risk, and capacity and expertise that I don't believe we really have. So we'd be kind of struggling, bumbling through some of this, but with a lot more opportunity to have access to a lot more dollars. The CET program that you guys have established, it accrues slowly, but you have been able to do things, and I feel like are right sized at the administrative level for moving that forward. So that's the opportunity cost. It's less amount to do things, but probably with less administrative and overhead cost, or access to a lot more capital to support development, but then we have to we will have to increase administrative capacity to.
So if we did find, a way to outsource the administrative tasks either to the county or to nonprofit, then is MIRL, is the CT money a better investment in MIRL or project like that?
I think the staff recommendation, and I welcome my staff to disagree with me, but I believe it is still for the capacity we have within our city to go the CET direction.
I know, but what in my postulation, I said it was taken out. In other words, found in outsourcing.
For part of it, for the compliance piece, but I still think there's an administrative element here. We've had some interesting relationships negotiate with the tax assessor in the past, and they've been bumpy because we have a very small lean city team that is tracking a lot to just keep the day-to-day operations going. So even if we can outsource the compliance, which is a huge
I'm with you, I have read,
Yeah.
the MIRL manual and the toolkits and everything like that, and it's daunting.
Yeah.
Help me understand this, is the nature of the accounting burden? I understand, I mean, we're seeing this in Coos Bay, they're doing a lot of work to set up the program. Is the challenge setting up the program and finding capacity to do that, or do we think if you had a nonprofit in the Hood River model, that our 5% admin fee would be able to cover the cost of working with the nonprofits to be able to do that?
I don't think the 5% admin fee is enough to actually. And I say that especially if you're adding monitoring and compliance piece. This is the piece that we haven't really talked about tonight. One of the questions I would like to ask you all is the minimum amount of term or affordability covenants that go on these properties of 120% or below is at least 10 years. The maximum loan term is 15, so you can go past 15. But that's just with regard to the loan. There's been the city also has the discretion to can reconfigure the affordability AMI that we want. So if you wanted to look at program criteria for projects that come through at like 80%, 60%, that can change some things. In addition, you don't have to say just 10 years. You can say actually we want at least 30 years restricted income units on this property if you're going to use these dollars, or even longer. So I say that because you all have had a lot of interest in deeper affordability as well as longer terms. And if you add those to deed restriction and covenants, that creates a longer period of compliance and monitoring. So the 5% administration fee on 1.5 million is not going to account for that.
Well, I guess,
But if we went with the river model and we were using nonprofit developers, they're already doing those long-term compliance.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
So if
you
we
think-
went with them,
Yeah.
that would deal with the compliance, and the 5% would be what we could spend on other staff costs, right? If the county said HACC will do your compliance, they might want the 5%, and then we don't have anything for our own costs. So I do think, yeah, I mean, just, it's hard to think of what all those other staff things might be, but some that come to mind for me are, I mean, apart from, yes, there's a huge staff time suck in getting the program established. But say you get the program established, then what are the time sucks on each application? So there's the figuring out if the financing stack is right.
Yep.
Figuring out, is this really a viable project that can be built and deliver on those? And you're kind of saying we don't have
We
that
don't have it.
expertise.
We don't have it. So
Yeah.
That's the contract.
And this memo is saying OHCS is saying they're gonna do that on some kind of provisional or advisory basis. They're working on a way to do that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Tillamook has said, okay, we're not gonna. So we thought we were gonna get more support when it came to underwriting specifically, and it doesn't sound like we are.
Lisa helped clarify it a little bit better. You have a nonprofit that does all the admin. We get the 5% admin fee for whatever else. We would still need additional resources.
Yeah, can I try to spell out what I think the city burden would be? So there's setup of the program, which is gonna be a big lift. IGAs, herding all you cats to come up with criteria, drafting ordinance language, preparing for those work sessions, but that's.
But we have a lot of expertise.
I know you guys are geniuses. Then it's up, then we gotta market it, we gotta have communications, we gotta put it up on the website, we gotta be able to talk to people, we have to have all the interface with developers as they come in and ask questions. Then there's, once you get applications, you have to review those, you have to do the viability checking and testing. Then a big piece here, and I wish I had brought Mike, is the financial administration and auditing. And that's frankly part of this that really stresses me out. I mean, we push our finance team to the max already, just administering the financial policies that we already have. the reminder to check in with the tax assessor and then monitoring all of this into our accounts, it's doable, but it's an additional thing that we don't do today, and I think would stress our system. And then there's compliance. So I think you're talking about outsourcing the last bit of that, which is great, because that's the biggest piece, but all of those other pieces will have to be absorbed by community development, city managers often.
That's not some counties.
It's because we'd be the sponsoring jurisdiction. I mean, I was really hopeful they were gonna say the county can be an SJ. And frankly, it's like, we'd still be waving away our property taxes, but like, at least they'd take on all those pieces. I think it's still putting all that, we are the program administrator for Milwaukie.
One question, go ahead. Just to know that on this, the 5% admin fee wouldn't cover, assuming compliance is gone. 5% admin fee wouldn't cover all the other work that you have to do. Set aside also the same, that it's the need for.
I mean, I can't show you a table where I've crunched all these numbers, but I also, this is application by application, and I can't just staff up for, immediate time, and so it's sort of figuring out how the staff and the workload can be absorbed on top when these things come in. I don't know if that would be within the 5%, but I think with this, I think the compliance piece is gonna gobble up all and most of that.
I think it's gonna be more tricky, and I think they give you the best shot working with the affordable housing developer, because again, they have an interest in the mission, and also typically other financing sources that require them to do the compliance piece. But what I don't understand and don't know is as a recommendation from staff, I would also, if some reason go down the road, I would not like the city to have the covenant in our name to our benefit. I'd rather have the covenant go to that affordable housing entity, because they would be doing compliance on our behalf. And so therefore they would create, and there is a piece of us that has to still be a part of that whole compliance piece, to do that evaluation, make sure they're actually doing the thing that we have a deed restriction to our name. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So that is also a piece of the puzzle as.
But is that something that is okay under this program?
I don't,
Oh.
and I don't think OHCS, that's. And I will also say, like, housing authority. They're gonna want, they would love that, they'll take the admin fee if they do one, and I think there might actually also be additional dollars they'll want. Because those won't be really their units, they'll be the city's units via covenant that they'll be administered, so I'm guessing. Finance goes a long time. Their interest is not those units, they're gonna want to work on our behalf, so there's gonna be some kind of interaction contracts.
Yeah, that 5%, if you're talking about a 30-year horizon, doesn't go there.
$75,000 from.
And I mean, whoever brought up the thing of. I mean, there's one thing to enforce on when it changes hands, and determining compliance when it changes hands, but the thing about renting it to. Somebody who's bought it, and we know that, I know that from the SHS meetings I attended last year. There are people playing those games, right? There are people getting housing vouchers and then renting them out and making a lot of money. That is another piece of enforcement or compliance that is separate from what we're talking about, the county or the nonprofit. I mean, I guess the nonprofits are probably present enough that they know that's happening.
Should, no chance, that would take forever for the city to find that out.
Yeah.
How is the 5% encumbered? Is it all
Like lump
all
sum
at
or-
once at the beginning, or is it every year as part of this
I don't know.
small?
That's a good question, I assume it's like a lump sum, but I could be totally wrong.
I think it's the lumps, it comes in
And
with the funds.
When the funds come in.
Okay, and then it's a project by project, right? So if we were trying to stand up a program to do compliance or to do implementation, then we would only receive that additional administration funding as we have green lights on specific projects. So I feel like from a budgeting perspective, that poses an inconsistency that that can really have an impact on trying to stand up some type of staffing model. And maybe it does go to a contract model at that point, which would, behoove more of a formal relationship with a nonprofit, but. I think your concern is very valid, Joseph, about, they're doing compliance or enforcement on our behalf. And that becomes really messy. I'm also wondering, and maybe I'm missing one of the questions, or maybe I haven't found it. Where does prevailing wage come in to this? We should assume all projects are done with prevailing wage, right?
Yes.
Well, we got a prevailing wage determination from,
Common question.
It's a huge point of concern for a lot of the jurisdictions we've talked about.
oh yeah, okay.
Because that makes it twice as expensive to do any of these projects. Which I think, I'm just thinking of the reasons that it would be less appealing for any developer,
Right.
whether it's for profit or nonprofit.
Yeah, C+.
I mean, this developer did submit a voting letter, said it wouldn't be subject to prevailing wage. That he sent us back before our March meeting.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be,
It would not be.
so, but how would that be?
And there's some
eligible for
voting
funds?
determination that it's about percentage of AMI that it's at or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have it, it's in our packet from March, from Austin Turner. The letter he got from Bowling, he did get the determination that it would not be.
So help me understand then, the state is accepting that and saying that there's a waiver from their program requirements, because their program requirements state that these should be done within prevailing wage, right?
The MIRL program requirements say that?
Does
I
it,
don't
or
think so.
or it just requires a determination letter upfront? But if the money is coming through us as a public jurisdiction, don't we have an obligation to do projects with prevailing wage?
Oh, Hillside wasn't built with prevailing wage. And that's part of the reason why there's no retail on the 32nd Street ground floor. Because adding retail making it mixed use would have triggered prevailing wage, but as long as it was all affordable housing, it didn't trigger.
There is some carve outs in bullet determination, but yeah, every project needs to say go through the bullet process.
Okay. Alright, that, thank you.
And I remember the developer saying that they received a bullet determination.
Then was it,
What I don't remember is what was actually.
I mean, the bullet, it was like a 2-page letter and it said, if it's this and if it's that.
Yeah, okay, that's what.
Then it wouldn't trigger prevailing wage.
Okay.
It didn't sound
Thank
like
you.
Foley had seen an actual
That was
performance.
my question. So that's my question. That's not a real determination.
Right.
That's just if it meets. There is kind of carve outs in the bullet determinations for usually it's AMI, so like low AMI,
Yeah.
60%. And using public funds, there's this threshold, you have to do this determination, so that's what I'm wondering is if that will clarify that. I remember him saying, I don't remember the.
Yeah, I mean, it was if you're building this much and at these price levels or these AMI, then it would not. But yeah, part of the whole frustration that we've spent so much time on this is we haven't seen a pro forma, right? We haven't. We're told they're gonna build them to this price point and we don't know if they really can do that or not. And they give pictures. And they're out, some people are going out to neighborhood associations, handing out pictures. I cannot get them to tell me where those pictures are. There are pictures of some townhomes built in Portland somewhere that they're comparing to short stack. And I was told that there were 3 developments that the developer has done in Portland. And yet when I asked for addresses so I can look them up and get tax records and see what they sold for, never get addresses. just put pictures out there, but never tell us where they are. So I mean, we're jumping through a lot of hoops for an undefined and not at all clear if it'll qualify.
Setting aside this development, if we look at just nonprofit developers, you've done this better than my sense is in their capital stack, they already likely would have public dollars, and so this program wouldn't necessarily. If it was going to be subject to prevailing wage, it probably would already be something in their stack. Or is that wrong?
Most public projects that nonprofit developers will take on
Yeah.
are subject to prevailing wage, yes. And my feeling is, the reason I would want to go with a nonprofit developer is because we would be even more, we would get even closer to the level of affordability that I would want to see built in to our infrastructure. So yes, that is the fact that's true. But I think you would also find that a lot of those developers will be unable to work on smaller projects because of just the funding that they have to secure in order to meet those prevailing wage, those BOLI requirements. So then you're looking at how many units will it actually take to pencil out so that, you know, they're on the hook for their funders too. So, and I think like what I'm reading as this very local flexibility that the MIRL program is promising, sounds appealing, but then when I pair that with what I have seen in terms of implementation and the constraints of implementation for nonprofit providers or for local jurisdictions, those are in conflict with each other, the scale of those projects.
And I guess my question is more, if you're a nonprofit, you're capital stack. Yeah, it's hard to press up like you. If you're a nonprofit developer, your capital stack work likely already includes public dollars, so I would assume that it wouldn't like. This MIRL allocation wouldn't necessarily change the fact that you're getting public dollars and you're maybe subject to that.
You are correct. I want to make sure that any path that we move forward with, we have a conversation about our expectations with prevailing wage.
Sure.
And local jurisdictions struggle with that. You know, you want to be able to build more housing, and yet the price of the project, you know, increases when that funding comes through a local jurisdiction, a public jurisdiction. So it's a yes and, I guess, but yes, I think that we would be more assured that we would have a developer, if we work with a nonprofit, we'd have a developer that is already comfortable going through that whole process and working with you know, contractors that are using prevailing wage. But that doesn't mean it's an easier project to build just because they have that comfort.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You know, it kind of strikes me that, you know, like a thought just passed through my brain. I said, why are we doing this? Why? I mean, you look at all of the hours that have been spent by staff and council and the developers and whoever else trying to figure this out. And I'm just going to like multiply that time all the jurisdictions in Oregon that are trying to sort this thing out. And, you know, I mean, I just don't think the state has done a very good job setting this thing up. I think that they just, I don't know who came up with it. I don't know if it was based on another state's program. I don't know. But there is just an inordinate amount of time being spent with city councilors trying to figure out the intricacies of a housing project. And I don't think, you know, we talk about this, the staff not having the expertise. I don't think we have the expertise to make some of these decisions.
Well, I was gonna do this anyway, but that's a good trigger for the conversations I've had with other mayors. So the mayors of Clackamas County meet with the together with the chairs of the county commission on average every 2 months. So when we first started hearing about MIRL and were approached, I asked, I believe it was the late September. I asked at the mayor's meeting, is anybody else working on MIRL? And like glassy-eyed stares, nobody knew what MIRL was. The county administrator, Gary Schmidt, sent out I gave him some links. He sent it out to all the mayors, said, here's, what we were talking about. If so far, Milwaukie is the only city that's expressed any interest. If any other cities are interested, please let me know. Time went by. There were a couple more meetings. I just kind of mentioned it in passing as a reminder to people, just wanting to see if there were mayors who said, oh yeah, we're working on that now. Crickets. No other mayors had ever indicated that their cities are actively. I mean, there were some questions, and at C4 around this table last week, there were a few questions, but I didn't hear any city saying, oh yeah, we're looking into the MIRL. Oh yeah, we want to do the MIRL. No. So this perception that some people are putting out there in the community that everybody else is working on the MIRL but Milwaukie, and Milwaukie is, we're actually doing a lot more on the MIRL than any other city in Clackamas County. Can't speak for the whole state, but I can say that for Clackamas County. Yeah, I do not know, having brought it up now at least 3 times in those mayor meetings and having been at the C4 table last week, I do not know of another city in Clackamas County that is pursuing this. That said, it was noted that the county commission is gonna look at it and is gonna discuss it on June 2nd. So good, I'm glad that they're, having that discussion, but I don't, yeah. It does seem like a lot of energy for, and yes, I would agree with your point that it's not a well-defined.
And just to build on that, Mayor, I would just, I made a pretty blunt city manager recommendation in the staff report. I am so proud of Joseph and Mandy and the amount of time and energy they've spent on this. I truly think they might be the biggest MIRL experts in the state right now. And I need them to work on it. And so I do, or work on this with direction. So I would like to kind of push you all to give us clear direction. Are we moving this onto an agenda on June 2nd? So that you can take some formal action to move this forward, or you don't have to do that. It's not currently in our forecaster, but I think we do need to know if this is a kind of go, no go. I don't think we can I don't think there's more rocks to turn over. I think we've turned over the rocks that we can. We've provided the information that we can. And we have an affordability goal. This is a really intriguing affordability strategy, but there's other things that we've talked about. Your housing production strategy calls for exploring a revolving loan program for first-time home buyers. That's something we can start working on, but we can't do everything. So I humbly am asking as your city manager that we get some direction tonight on if you do want to move this forward so that we can put that on the June 2nd agenda and then define what moving forward is.
I will say this, that in the LOC meeting today too, OHCS had mentioned. They're still working things out and they're still trying to work with cities to figure this out, but they had mentioned there might be something in 27, but then the housing stability program or committee came on and they didn't see anything that was coming up in the 27th session. I don't know if you heard anything about anything changing in the next session. If they're going to bring MIRL up again, or is this kind of like they're just going to set it where it is and kind of cities figure this out?
So right now agencies are developing their potential topics or bills to bring to the governor. I have not heard from OHCS that they're putting together a bill on this topic. That's not to say we couldn't ask our state legislators to try and put something together, but I don't know of anything that is a legislative fix to MIRL that legislators working on this session.
I mean, Mark sort of indicated that he
Yeah.
expected that, but that was 4 months ago, and there's been a session in between, so.
Yeah, and I do know that we, like LOC, it's like that's one of the topics that we're looking at for one of the lobbying things, or LLC to do is to clarify that. Because I think the overall perception I got is there's a lot of places that want to do it, but they're just trying to figure out how to put a square peg in a round hole, basically. And the state's kind of made it very difficult. I potentially see a path with the Hood River stuff, but I do you three have brought up good points. And I think there's still things to work out if we did want to go forward, but I just, you know, I'm at the mercy of you all. I mean, I just don't want this to go away, because I do think that this is an opportunity, like I said, to kind of have more control over what's built, but I do see that it's a heavy lift. I'd like to see us at the table when the county has these discussions. You know, I think less of the onus should be on staff and more of the onus should be on us if we're interested in trying to work with the entities that are also trying to figure this out. But yeah, that's kind of what I like where some of this stuff can go, but you guys have brought up some points that have poked forward with some of this stuff that I don't know about having staff spend more time as opposed to us individually.
Right now, given the compliance piece and the uncertainty, just the limitations that have been described with us being able to administer compliance, I don't see a way forward with our staff doing it for for-profit developers unless we had some conversation with the county that is all uncertain right now. So let's write that off. I'm interested in thinking around this table if it's possible to do it for nonprofit developers only. But to make that decision, I think I do is kind of a question for you on like what are the trade-offs? There's two things no staff left that we've discussed. One is the staying with the program. And you mentioned a little bit about our housing production strategy. If this is something that we pursued, what would it look like for the next 6 months, our affordability work? And as you think through the like work that we can do, it's also helpful to think about, okay, what's the like impact of these dollars for the time that we're spending?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about the reason this is appealing to me is there's so much potential that's available. And the fact that other cities are dragging their feet in some ways means there's even more money available. Flip side then is like, I don't know, there's a large investment here, so how does it compare to others? And then also setting aside the stand-up period, I still don't quite understand a nonprofit, give them the units to administer, they do all of that. What does that kind of ongoing piece look like for us and how much of that amount to?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a lot of crazy things and then I'm gonna look to Joseph to rein me in. So I think if the direction was go forward with the Hood River style MIRL, I think I'd go back and I'd talk to Joseph and I'd talk to Laura about work plans, and I'd probably be coming back and saying, for your affordability goal action plan, some of those HPS things have to get punted. I don't think we can have the conversation about the first time home buyer revolving loan and this. I think that might break the system. So we'd ask you kind of about which one would go first. We'd then start probably policy conversations with all of you about originating ordinances, criteria, those kinds of things. While meanwhile starting the train with the county on IGAs. And I think we all know how fun that can be. But so that'd be work we would do. You said a 6-month time horizon. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph, but I don't think we could have the program stood up in 6 months just with all of those kind of nuanced pieces having to fall together. So I think in 6 months from now, we'd still probably be coming to you with updates on the IGA development process and working through those things. And then to the administrative piece, so I think we can, also start getting things rolling. Are we going to communicate this? How are we going to advertise it? How are we going to reach out to our existing nonprofit partners about it? But we also have to start creating all of the templates and application materials. Mandy just provided me a 15-page document from the MIRL handbook of all the things SJs are supposed to do. And Mandy's amazing. So she's already highlighted it with here's what we have in-house expertise to do and here's what we don't. And so we'd be trying to figure out how we fill those holes for that. So that I think is, and I'm really not trying to be negative because I'm a big believer we can do anything. We just can't do everything. And if this is something you're excited about, we are going to do it. We're going to do it well. And I think it's going to be a kind of slow roll to get something stood up. I think if we if your direction was to not pursue this, what we would do at our next affordability goal check-in is bring up some of those HPS strategies that have already been approved and you've given us direction. And talk about how we're gonna move those
Yeah.
forward.
With all due respect, so as the lane leader, I'm not willing to put aside the other things that we know are gonna have an impact with something that is. We don't know, I'm not going to do that.
And
I guess it's also. You know, if we say not now, it's not saying not ever, right? It's saying. When we know what the county's gonna do, when we know what OHCS is gonna do with providing, in terms of providing support for the. Whatever you call it, what did you call that? Well, not the compliance, but the. Have they proven the viability?
Underwriting.
Underwriting,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah. When we know that if the state's gonna support that, you know, I think it may make sense to come back to this in 6 months or a year. But I agree, I wouldn't want us to delay.
Or have the rail or the affordability goal. It's not.
I agree that I think there's checkpoints we need to wait on. See whether we should go forward. One is the county. One is the underwriting. So that we can make a determination. I thought I heard you say you were proposing, at least you got a straw man for the nonprofit model. Is there a reason why you tell me the reason why you're wanting to set the county aside for the time being?
I think we just don't know. For-profit developers would take staff time that we don't have to be able to distribute units. The county has a housing authority, but we don't know yet if we could contract with the housing authority for that. It's a conversation that they're gonna have on June 2nd. You two were both there. I asked about it, Mayor Milwaukie asked about it, asked about it. So I think county or cities are pushing on the county to allow that, but it's just something we don't know right now.
Yeah, that's why I say it's a checkpoint, and I just don't think it's a useful, investment of time until we reach those 2 or 3 checkpoints that have been described. You know, it may, I don't know, maybe even when you do those checkpoints, we won't have any answers. And it may be. We don't proceed further.
I mean, I would love
But
to.
I would love for all the answers to come back. Yeah, this is great, yay, barely, but this is the first time really the county is really interested in detail and guess what? We're on our 3rd meeting over 4 months or whatever it is, maybe longer, so. I'll put ourselves up against the county commissioners anytime. I think we do as good a job as they do, most likely.
Sent a tetherball team.
You know, the one thing you said at the beginning about Dev Northwest working with. Eugene, because I look at this. I mean, I think about all we've said today, and I look at this Hood River model, and I wonder if any nonprofits really want to engage in this, or do they already have enough other funding sources, or does this really fill a gap for them? So, maybe Hood River has somebody that they're wanting to do that with. And you told us that Eugene and Dev Northwest. So I'm kind of curious about how those experiences play out too.
I think we can probably assume that if you ask any nonprofit housing provider, do you want more money to be able to do nonprofit housing, we're going to say yes. That said, I think that if we're choosing not to go forward with it here, one of the things that I think about is we spend with all the people in the room a lot of time, more than any other city in this county, one of the most of any city in the state grappling with this program. Are there a list of things that we could bring to rep Gamba to act specifically in a legislative fix for the 2027 session? Are there things, if we're choosing not to go forward and we'd like to stay fix, I think it would be helpful to think through, okay, what are the best things that we ask for in state fix, assuming OHCS isn't gonna do that themselves.
You got an example right here.
I don't know what.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I think if we were to do that, assuming that he's interested in being the champion to bring that forth, because short session, you have your list. And your list is
We have long
usually,
session next, so.
oh, right. Look, I've been out of there.
There you go, I know,
Here.
I am. You blinked.
Legislative. Okay, so then my suggestion is, still stands.
Yeah.
As, I think it might be helpful to collaborate with some of those other cities that are grappling with these same questions. So that there is some, economy of scale of ideas. So that takes staff time to do. That, but if we are going to ask for some type of legislative involvement, I think it has to be informed by what a collection of jurisdictions are experiencing.
Well, so is that what your LOC committee is doing? So,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't put our lobby list together yet. But MIRL has been a big topic, so I think that infrastructure.
What is the timeline for these to the rest?
September is our build plan. And I don't think we want to, September 11th.
Is that for concepts?
For concepts, yeah, so we have to have.
At least I remember that.
We have to have, and it can be really big, we can say, here are bullet points that we think are best to send to lawyers. I think what would be helpful, I'm not asking us to spend our precious lobbying dollars on this, I'm saying more, could we think of around the table today, what are some of the high level things we would want fixed in this program? We can just hand through it and say, hey, as a starting point, this is what we're seeing.
Isn't Day at the Capitol coming up too?
Yeah,
Ledge days are coming up in June.
no, the LOC lobby, is that what you mean?
No, I just met with Chaichi, she was saying that there's like
There's
that what that is?
There's legislative
Like
days,
June.
there's also like the day that LOC.
but that won't be until January.
That's not LOC's thing, this was something.
That won't be until February.
We have
It's
ledge
coming up in
days,
June.
yeah,
We
June
can go down
15,
and at least meet with,
16,
yeah,
17.
we can make an appointment, at least prep them,
Can I ask a
that'd be done with it.
ignorant question? Because Joseph and Mandy might know the most about MIRL in the entire state. I don't. Why, like, yes, I think we could package up a bunch of things that can make this more palatable to cities, but the fundamental question that I keep wrestling with is the state has this money. Everyone wants to see this money go to support housing. Why aren't they just administering
So
funds?
that's.
Oh,
I don't,
That's honestly it, this,
I don't get it.
that was my, give me my one, good job.
Sorry, Sawyer.
No, but it's also been part of the conversation we've been having with other cities, is like, so we're trying to do. Square into a circle, hey, whatever that. And it would be, it's interesting out of the state, we receive a lot of things that we have to carry out, new laws. That we have to implement on behalf of the state. This is one of those things that's like, it would be nice if we didn't have to implement, because we don't. Most cities, the vast majority of cities in Oregon do not have the ability to do this. And it's just, you create a great pot of money, and it's frustrating, I'll say, as for all of us, this is a frustrating piece, because I think we all care about housing and housing justice. And we're trying to figure out how to unlock $70 million of us now, but. And every other city's doing the same thing, like this conversation, by the way, is, I think, Mary, you're right, we've probably been one of the jurisdictions that have had the most conversation about it in the state, I think that's actually a fair assessment. But everyone that is having a conversation is either really excited because they haven't talked about it really. And they start talking about it and they're like, oh, I don't know about that, how does that work? They're just questions about it. Or those that got into some progress and now they're like, oh, we don't know how to do that. Like they just find out. So I think it really is, it's not so much of
A fix.
a fix.
Exactly.
If you really want to unlock those dollars, just do what you've done with, I say you, the state, how they've done other grant or loan programs, just direct.
Like this Biz Oregon grant, like it just, and
My
maybe I'm
sense-
missing something, Will.
So my sense is this is something that the agency put forward, and I think the agency was trying to give local control over the dollars, and I think they saw it by having a sponsoring jurisdiction that gets to approve project, kind of back to the question before. Cities would have leverage to choose what projects they do. Overlooking the fact that cities don't have the capacity to actually do that, but I think that this charming idea, you give local control to installers. And therefore, like, that's why you carve out cities from counties being able to just sweep over that and sort of is as local as possible, we want to keep that control.
Yeah.
One of the things that we
Local
both
control.
state,
Then just let us use the existing tools that we have and put the money through that. That's local control.
I see what you're saying, I think it was good intent, I just think,
I think all
I agree.
8 of us around this table would have decided
Yeah.
differently. I'm trying to see today.
Yeah.
While everyone's here, what are some things that we could say to represent I've state administered the program, the bullet, but are there other things that are helpful to them?
We want to start, and I tell you, you can go through this is really all of our concerns. Unless we have more out of this, all 10 of my concerns right here. And
yeah. Some fix to the compliance piece,
yeah, the default piece, the liability piece. Yeah, the compliance, yeah, local control, but also local liability.
The compliance fees, and it honestly would be, I think it would be great to be able to offer the program to for-profit developers, to create affordable housing, because
yeah,
that's like. We can get affordable housing from affordable housing developers, but to get affordable housing from for-profit developers is pretty cool. But they get to leave after they build, and we are on the hook for compliance and monitoring, that is the change.
you know. I don't wanna focus too much on the single project that sort of kicked this all off, but like, if this had been a state administered program and the state had a solution for compliance, we would be thrilled to welcome that project. Like, it's just like, we are not equipped as the body to do that, you know, so it's not that we don't want these projects and these actions in the city, it's just, we're not just.
And I'll tell you, at the NDA meeting, when this project was first presented at Linwood, I was on Zoom. And I texted one of the people involved, hell yeah, with exclamation marks, because they were like, this is gonna go tomorrow, I was so excited. And then you get to this point and you're just like, damn. And even Rev Gamma was like, yeah, it was great until it got to the rules committee.
Yeah.
So.
I think I can unlock those funds, but I really like, actually, I mean, I think in a letter or, you know, advocacy to the state, I think Joseph hits on a really good point. There's something here about unlocking private development of affordable housing. It can't be put on cities that don't have that expertise, and I think that'd be a great nut for the state to crack.
And could the state establish a contingency fund? Instead of us doing it?
Yeah.
And legal consultation fund? Or,
Or just grant us the dollars, get rid of the one.
well, I mean.
I know they want the problem, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's, you know, created this very
Yes.
convoluted thing, is the desire for it to be a revolving fund and not just a.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but I was like, yeah, if they gave $75 million and said, you could spend this for moderate income that, you know, qualifies at this, you know, whatever AMI, and you can build out their infrastructure for them.
Yeah.
You know, and just give it as a grant and not make it this convoluted, you know,
They would have, all that money would be gone and.
long gone.
It would have gone.
Long gone.
Quite a few
Yes.
units.
I feel like we have some good bullets we could bring directly in, but the other thing that I'd say, I sent around a letter to everyone. Even if we're not gonna pursue MIRL in the short term, asking the county to set up some type of system if they're pursuing MIRL. For cities to be able to contract. That assumes that the structure of MIRL stays the same, which if our laundry list of demands gets adopted, maybe it's different, but I think sending that letter to the county. And circulating with other cities might be a worthwhile effort, just to see. Hopefully the county can get part of that.
Do you want us to pull the letter up, Will?
Sure.
Maybe before we leave this slide, I mean, I'll ask the question, but if you wanna come back to it, we can. I'm not hearing that there's consensus to put something on for June 2nd for you guys to take action.
I'm not here, no.
Okay. So Nick, you need to pull up the council prep, not the letter I emailed you, this president's letter.
Remove that one.
I didn't write a competing letter, it's a different file.
It's better, he saw all the tensions.
Hey, this is sort of a off the wall question, but has anyone thought about what sort of pressures we might encounter if we put in a MIRL program from developers who wanted us to approve these projects?
What do you mean?
If we implemented a MIRL, has anyone thought about the pressures that might come to the city council as we consider these projects? Because I can foresee a lot of arm twisting.
Oh, yeah.
You can foresee,
A lot of arm twisting.
oh,
I mean, what's challenging too, I mean, you still have to set up your criteria and you already have sort of a proposal on that. It's an interesting way we got to this place, yeah. It creates some interesting dynamics.
Or it might have funding from the Milwaukie Park.
I would say it already has consequences. We don't even have a product. We don't have a.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
this letter, right?
Yep.
This letter, yeah, thank you. And you make it a little bit bigger here.
Well,
I'm sure it'll get there.
okay.
They usually have these.
I was
more to
well.
Which AI app did you use?
Check.
Nice. I'm ready.
I thought yeah. I thought the letter was good until the end, and then there was language at the end that concerned me.
I'm not wedded to any language, so yep.
So I wonder, do you really want to say right now with participating cities paying the equivalent of the existing 5% administrative fee? That seems quite specific.
Sure.
I think you could just end it after programs, delete the with participating.
And is there a benefit to having the housing authority of Clackamas County called out specifically, or because that's like their guidance they receive from HUD? So I feel like that complicates things a little bit more.
Did you say contracting with the county?
It could just say contracting with the county, it could say like, community development or something along those, like the department that the housing authority resides within.
Yeah.
That's where the contract
H3S.
is. Yeah.
Is H3S.
You know, yeah, I have an issue with the last part too. First line of the last paragraph, actually.
If we wanted to delete that, we couldn't.
I'm good. I really,
Yeah, just we appreciate your consideration and look forward to continuing to work together.
Yeah.
that's more honest.
It's more honest, yeah.
Okay, so those two deletions.
Can you scroll back a little bit? Okay, let's get. Okay, and scroll down now, sorry. Given that, so we're saying, given that the changing housing authority to be H3S administer local rural programs, period.
Mhm.
Were you looking at?
The only other thing that I would suggest is perhaps some language around alignment where, like. This could create alignment between any future implementation of MIRL in an unincorporated area.
Yeah.
That would be another reason for them to contract with cities to do this.
Yeah.
So that there's alignment of our implementation of land use programming.
Perhaps we could say that in the paragraph that's half cut off at the top. I talked a little bit about unincorporated areas there. And the good reference there, because I do think that's a difference.
Yeah, and I think that the county feels a pull between their responsibility to unincorporated areas and all the things that cities request of them. So this, I think, it like making that change and asking them to plan for the alignment of implementation across, all jurisdictions. Actually recognizes that like difficulty for them a little bit.
With all the edits, would we wanna add our logo to this, or? The challenge that I'm thinking is the letter moot, because we're not really going for it anymore. Do we wanna be good regional partners and ask for something that other cities may be interested in as well? Because in some ways, we're asking for something that we wouldn't actually take advantage of, and I feel a little bad about that. But I do think if the county is doing this, this is a fair ask to say,
Yeah.
hypothetically.
Cause it's not like we're saying we're never gonna do it. And this is one of the barriers that we have.
Yeah.
So,
If this existed, perhaps this conversation would be a little easier for us to have.
You convinced me, I like it. Okay, we make all those edits, add our logo, people are okay with that, and then we'll circulate to other cities to see if they want to add their logos as well.
You're gonna do that?
Sure.
I'll be curious to see what response you get, and you're gonna try to do that before June second, trying to get it to them ahead.
I would like to make a request that if in that process, other cities request changes to the letter, that you
Bring it
recirculate it to
back,
council.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send it around this week. We can see if anyone, will have to grapple with it at that time. We can send it around this week and wait a few weeks for that.
Yeah, you basically got 2 weeks after this one.
Yeah, the hard thing
You can
is.
send it directly to the cities, not through the C4 mailing list.
Yeah. Challenge I'm thinking through is if we meet on the 19th. That's when we have to talk about things. We just have to say no changes to the letter. Because we wouldn't meet again.
Or we could say tonight that we're fine moving forward with the letter, assuming no changes.
Sure.
But then if there are proposed changes from other cities, that would
Yeah.
necessitate further conversation on that.
I mean, that may be an argument for shortening the letter, because you
Yeah.
have people less things to nitpick with, but.
That's coming from a lawyer.
Sorry.
Pardon?
I said, that's coming from a lawyer.
Yeah.
Council President, back on you, the list, the bullets for Rep Gambit, is the piece about counties being sponsoring jurisdictions? Like,
Well,
I mean,
here's the thing that I see as attention, if we're asking for the state to administer it,
I agree.
then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think if that's not something that you ask for, then it makes sense to
Yeah.
allow counties just to supersede local jurisdictions. And implement it across the entire county.
Right.
So,
I think go with the state piece.
Yeah.
Andy?
We have one, it's on our matrix, it's number 22. And it is something we heard in some of our conversations on OHS's response, that the MIRL one would be in first position. So I'm not sure if that might need to be something we asked about, because it sounds like that would be impossible.
yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing, the main thing that I do that.
No chance.
Also. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think as, somebody asked about the deadline for the legislature. I mean, LOC's well aware of that. That's why these committees are meeting now, because they're gearing up for what LOC's ask will be. Anything kind of midsummer, it might be good to have a check-in and further conversation about what's been identified to ask for, and to kind of flesh out that list of
Yeah, for sure.
what we want.
Actually, might have that list and facilitating. About just all the topics that, because we just went like we brainstorm.
Any closing comments on that?
Thank you for all the work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Joseph Amanda.
Gotta go work at OHCS now.
Oh my, that's been the real takeaway, right, Andy?
But I feel for those, yeah, even then in front of C4, they. So confident, they're selling something that is like.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah.
But excellent work, you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
Now,
for-
all fine, all energy and. All the stuff you have about this meeting, you're welcome, it's called the last.
All right,
Sure.
so we have council reports. Anybody have council reports?
You know, I got a couple of things I'll bring up this week. You know, we talked about this is not really a council report, but it's timely here. We talked about the solid waste.
Oh, yeah, we have that from Emma, there's a letter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, we have a letter from 5 or 6 members of the regional advisory board going to the Metro Council, which basically, you know, supports everything that we said. So we've been asked to sign on to that letter, and I think we should. Does anyone have any questions on it? There's 5 members, including Denise McGriff and Mark Frady.
So were they asking us to sign on or were you
It's just confusing to me, so my read of Niels's email is actually that the signers of this letter are members of the
They are.
RWAC.
They are.
And he was suggesting if we like the talking points of the letter, we send our own letter.
Oh, really?
I believe so, I can confirm that with him tomorrow if they're looking for additional signatories, but see, the first line here is as entities of representation on the Regional Waste Advisory Committee. And I don't believe we are an entity
We're not.
of representation, so I think what he's saying is they would love us to send a very similar letter.
Or
That's
just a shorter letter.
A shorter letter that pulls out
We
those.
support the position taken
Yeah.
by the, yeah. 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 Is anybody opposed to that?
No.
So in that case, why don't I just double check that that is what Niels was proposing, and then I could, do you wanna talk about all the pieces in this, or really focus on that, future fee increase section? Future fee increase
Do you?
section.
Okay, well, I have to say, yes, the future fee increase is what we've all been concerned about. I found this food scraps technical assistance and specifically the breakdown they give of how much is spent in different. I found it pretty interesting. Keep going. Keep going. There we go, this thing about how many regional, how much goes into local waste, local government waste programs has been going down. Yeah, I mean, I found all that interesting, but I don't guess I mean, if they felt it important enough to call out and they're the people at the table, I guess I'm inclined to support them on both pieces, but.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't jump on it is I just didn't, you know, I'm just not familiar with it. It's pretty detailed. But. I mean, we can give support to that in a more generic way rather than going into all the detail there, I think. Okay.
We will draft something up.
And was there a timeline? Did they need it before Tuesday? I mean, you guys can, I won't be here.
Their meeting is the 28th.
Okay, so we can just do it next week.
Finalize
so
it
we
on
can-
Tuesday. And you can, I won't be there, but my authority will put on my signature.
There we go. Okay, thanks. Cover my report.
Okay. So, I don't have a staff report, but part meets next Wednesday, and so you can expect a very thorough debrief at the next part meeting.
Okay, yep. I do have one or two. So we met has the cap earlier this month, and we got some new members on our board, which one of them was Milwaukie.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we actually have I think for the first time in CAP, we have a youth member, a high school student, 16-year-old, that goes to Rex. So it's going to be a great perspective. And then we also got another member who works with the Father's Heart. So it's I think it's a pretty robust group, and I think we're going to do a lot of good things. We in our next meeting, I know that that's our in-person meeting. We're actually pivoting. I haven't heard this yet, Jen. Maybe it'll tell you. But we're going to pivot and kind of make that a mini retreat because we want to find out better ways to do what we're doing to get more involvement from people. So we're not. Is that the main thing that people have come to join these boards at the counties because they actually want to do something and make an impact. Sometimes you can feel like you're meeting just to meet. It doesn't work necessarily in the way that our boards and committees usually is you're working on something that will potentially make its way to council at some point. So it's going to be implemented in some way. Counties, I really like that. Like I said, we haven't had a county commissioner come to a cabinet since I've been on. So but then you can feel disconnected, and it always feels like if you're going to be the echo chamber. So we're going to try to reimagine the CAB in a different way. Right now, like our agendas are all done in executive committee meetings. I feel like that's not very inclusive to our other members. People might have joined the board for various reasons, and if we're just making the agenda, you may never get to that person's purpose for being there. So we're going to expand it to make it the whole CAB be involved in that. We did get an update on our strategic plan. We are going to continue to do the listening sessions again through the tour, I should say. But that also isn't going to be just county staff that's presenting. Staff will present on the figures and numbers, but we're going to actually have CAB members be up with staff to share their stories of what they're seeing too, to make it a little bit more impactful rather than just looking at the notes. But it's going to be great. I'm also willing to. I put it out there too, and I'll say it out there now. I'm the chair, but I'm more than willing to step down if my style has gone a little bit stale. Because the last thing I want to do is feel like only I can fix it. And the last thing I want to do is make other people feel like they can't, because there's still a power dynamic that exists. People know I'm a counselor, so there's still that dynamic of they may not say it, but I might be doing a crap job, right? So I'd rather just put that out there and let them be more involved in that and have the courtesy to get the hell out of the way sometimes. So that's all updates on the CAB. We're hoping that'll get more people involved, and that'll get more people to stay. We lost 2 members, which isn't that like big, but a lot of it was for the same reason, because they wanted to feel like they're doing, which is great. They should move to Milwaukie. The other thing, so the chamber had their meeting as well. And NCPRD did a presentation. And so it looks like so NCPRD right now is going to be putting out a survey for a levy. And it's going to be 18 cents per aiming at. So they're going to test the waters through a survey of what they can do with that. And if it's something that it would be a 5-year levy, and it would if they get good polling, then they're going to push it to, they said this November. So
Did you say 18 cents?
yes, 18 cents per thousand. It comes out to be $54 a year.
An increase.
450. Yeah, it's an increase. Yep, an increase in the form of a levy, right? So,
But does that get them to 70 cents?
Not quite.
72
yeah,
or 54.
54 to 18 cents. Okay. The rate increase would require a new board. I didn't realize that a rate increase would require a new board to be elected.
Or just you have to dissolve the.
Yeah, you have to do right.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already currently polling 18 cents. Minimal amount they need. That's the minimal amount they need to avoid fiscal cliff. Could be higher. That's like their floor. Still too, sorry, my handwriting, I was in the car. You were.
Don't say that.
Don't say that.
I am an honest man.
I had my drink in one hand, my hand.
I wasn't on the phone, I was just writing, so it's kind of hard to read that, but
Steve's on the wheel.
hey, you know, I can keep. Still too soon to identify rate. Aware of. Okay, skip that, if polling is bad, they won't go in the fall. Oh, and so there's like there's a general consensus, because they brought up the Meals on Wheels thing for the budget. And there's like a general consensus that Meals on Wheels shouldn't be parks. That's coming from members of the chamber, which kind of makes sense, right? 'Cause that's not really social service. Yeah, it is a point, they're having conversations with local nonprofits for Meals on Wheels take over operations. Just, I think so.
So wait, there was a general consensus that they didn't think it made sense under parks, but they didn't have a solution for.
Yeah, well, I mean,
what
the consensus was more from chamber members. There were some chamber members that were like, yeah, we don't think that they should even be under.
Do they
parks.
even understand?
No, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak on it. I mean, even the NCRD person that was there was kind of doing it too, like, it's not really a forest operation. But they are having conversations with local nonprofits to take that over, that whole process over. I don't know what the impacts are gonna be, and I'd love to learn more about what those conversations look like.
Because the county administers that program.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't get moved to another relevant program or department within the county, then we wouldn't be able to pull in the federal funding.
So that's why I wanna know more, I don't know if they're gonna if it's delivery, if it's the logistics of it.
Yeah.
Like they still administer the funds, but the logistics is carried out by the nonprofit.
Yeah.
I don't know what the extent is of that, but we should definitely find out more.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's other pieces to senior services that
Oh,
they
yeah.
provide beyond Meals on Wheels. There's all the programming for, you know, classes that are so focused on seniors and activities that are focused on seniors.
Yeah, and they weren't saying anything about those, they were just saying that, so, I think it's more so just. And some logistics of it, but. You know, I don't know what it all entails, so I can't speak on it, but I do wanna learn more because. The Meals on Wheels thing has been a topic, you know, at one point where. The budget was gonna be impacted for that, they were gonna cut when they were delivering meals, which doesn't make sense because people have to eat. But anyways, I'm trying to figure out what this says, but. Aware of tax.
Run an on-ramp in and they.
Oh, aware of tax fatigue, there you go. So that's the thing, they're aware of the tax fatigue because of all the other things that are going through.
So and we know the school's going out in November.
Yes.
What
What is it going up? And then obviously LOC, we met this morning. Kind of already touched on those things, one thing that struck me, and there was another slide, I don't even know this slide. I can't even get a haircut, it's good, so forgive me. There's a potential.
Great.
Thank you, actually, but I told you, thank you. Potential short, okay, so the ask for the. Like I guess there's a shelter wide, like a statewide shelter program. And the governor, because the governor's bunch of people were there, and the governor asked for a certain amount, but it doesn't look like the legislature is gonna give her what she wants. So there could be a budget shortfall there, but apparently there's some whispers along the legislatures that. They don't see that as like a state thing. And that there is some momentum to put it more on cities. And a lot of people at LC were like, well, cities don't have capacity to run these things, like this should stay at the state level. So I'm gonna find out more about that because that's concerning. I don't know if you heard anything about that as it pertains to the statewide shelter program.
No, I don't know what that's like. That one, I mean, we're just implementing that bill that was passed 25. So still in, yeah.
So, yeah, that was the gist of it. There were some good comments on the MIRL stuff and, you know. A lot of jurisdictions are trying to figure it out. One comment that was made that was really awesome. Was from the city manager of Prineville, who said, you know. You guys wanna help us, like the housing straight, even the housing straight, you made a comment that the housing strategy is pretty much useless, because unless you have the infrastructure, you can't support housing. So he's like, just give me the money to build a road and I'll build 1,000 houses in the long run. So I know infrastructure is another big topic that most likely gonna stay on top of our list at LLC, just because that's always an issue. And yeah, and then that's about it. And please, if there's any specific issues that you would like me to take to them, please let me know. Email me, reach out to me. If there's any land use or housing issues. We can work that one out. Mention. That's it.
Other reports?
I just thought I'd see if anybody had any questions about, like, I don't know, I don't feel like I have, the state of downtown kind of update this time, but we have seen 2 of the farmers market Sundays now, and hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to stop by and see how bustling it is. There was a wine walk on Sunday. So that's the second one that the Business of Milwaukie group has put together. And that group seems to be building more momentum and structure behind it, which is exciting. And just, I think that there's kind of a general excitement. There are 2 shops just here by Windhorse that did their soft open. They're gonna be closed for various reasons for the next, couple of weeks, I guess. And then in June, I think they'll be open with more regular hours. But that's exciting, and
I think that they're looking at a ribbon cutting on first Friday, maybe.
or the yarn shop, right? Or for both.
I think maybe for both. I don't know.
Because Terry's going to.
Oh, okay, well, then
She might be back in time. Yeah, I think it's really cool that the ribbon cutting is starting to, be more locally organized. Because we had an opportunity when we opened our shop to do a ribbon cutting through the chamber, but it was like, if you become a member, and we didn't have an extra $500.
Is that what they're doing?
Well, that was just the email.
Oh, that's about it, because they brought up, oh, we've been doing our ribbon cutting through Milwaukee and trying to get parties, I don't even charge you.
Yeah, I think you're right that they're gonna, the local groups are filling the void.
Yeah.
I'm going to Kinder tomorrow at 1.
are they doing present? Oh, really?
Vendors.
Kinder is a little
Oh, yeah.
boutique, right next to, writing some things from another world.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a very dangerous store. I spent far too much money in there. It's
Yeah.
it's like, no, between your, it's just like, somehow the dollars just fall out of my pocket as I walk by.
There's also, like, I've seen a call for vintage vendors. One of the shops that's opening up, one of the 2 vintage themed shops that's opening up in the Collectors Mall space, the Rexall building. They put out a call for vendors, so they're hopefully bringing some of the, I don't know if others who were in that space originally will be able to come back to that space, but hopefully connecting with some local folks. For First Friday, we had a first Friday. It was a little bit of a slow start as well for that, because it fell on May Day, and one of the national economic strike days. So there were some of us who just made a choice to keep it kind of low key. And that seemed to work well, as people were just, finding their way back to First Friday kind of, I don't know, what do you call that, the routine of things, the groove. So June will be the next First Friday, and then July will be skipped, and then will be August, and we're kind of hoping, I think, September, October, but it'll be weather dependent too. So Rob Campbell and I think a very, very small mighty crew from the Downtown Alliance is trying to pull that together, but there will be hubs. So unlike last year where there were zones of downtown that were closed. Stop me if you've all heard this already. So if you know this already, I won't. Okay, so last year they did like sections working their way down Main Street, and a block, little block party was kind of like had, and a small section of Main Street was closed at a time. This time, they're focusing on hubs. And there will be activity at those hub locations each first Friday, and then other businesses, as they have capacity, are encouraged to add things. So there will be a night market around Main Street and Jackson. It's right on a
That's cool.
couple blocks down. That'll start on the first Friday in June, but we're anticipating that might continue every Friday for the summer. Give that a try. And so there's enough interest this time for that hub to be full of vendors, and for maybe Milwaukee's hub to be the overflow for that location. So that's really exciting. And a lot of vendors who had participated in First Friday previously are coming back through that. So that's a big thank you to Rob and to Dark Horse for the utilization of their lot for First Friday, because then that allows us to create space for vendors to set up. So it's going well. Downtown exists.
More than
The business of Milwaukie Group has also, it's the entire city. So it's been really interesting to be part of the conversation and coordinating with folks in that network. That has been really good. And we had a really cool opportunity. A few of us who have been doing some creative economic development things downtown, and let me not be so vague. Creativity as an economic driver, those types of events like music and performances and crafts and creating and theater and things like that. So around all of Milwaukie, I convened a group to meet with ADX Portland, which is a makerspace in Southeast. And there were probably, I would say about 15 people, maybe more, 15-ish, who showed up for that. And we had conversation about what it would look like for Milwaukie to be on the map officially, as ADX has this creativity festival in October. So it's a regional festival focused on creativity as an economic driver. And they had reached out wanting to see if we could highlight a couple of events. And what they got was this meeting of so many people who are doing creative things across the whole city, and this really wonderful response. So they're excited to try and build that out. And it'll probably look like a Milwaukie itinerary as part of that festival in October. So we'll have more details on that soon.
So I worked the city information booth on Sunday,
Yeah.
and the hot ticket was not stickers. It was the passport. They were flying off the table.
Oh, good.
Really?
It's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was surprised to see a Pilates place opening.
I am a founding member. Are you? And it happens to be right next to Luna's. So my plan is to do Pilates.
Excellent.
And they get ice cream. It's Club Pilates.
I thought that was an interesting place.
That makes total sense.
You do Pilates, get ice cream, and then go to Weight Watchers.
Talk about wraparound services.
Yeah. Well, the rumor is also should be a burger. Yeah.
That's exciting. How many passports does the city?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure we can always get more, but we just get Oh, well, I actually didn't know that Jason was putting it out there, so that's great.
They were really, I'm telling you what, people were really interested in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Local businesses received, I think, 20 passports. And then there are some businesses along Main Street who paid extra to get more of the passports. They were sponsors of the passports. But I think there's still a real hot commodity out there, so.
I'm very happy that they went maroon this time. It's an
Yay.
EU passport and stuff.
I did hear on the creativity front, I did hear from, the woman at, St. Change that she has a big table in the front window. She does plan to do a, crafting night once a week where people can come knit or do other crafts and just kind of hang out, social. And I know that spoken word does some of that.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really special that there are multiple stores along Main Street at least that have utilized their front window space as a way to showcase community. Doing those workshops and like having places for people to gather. So I think it means when you look through the windows, you're seeing more than just things to buy. You're seeing ways to create and connect with each other, and that is very Milwaukee. It's exciting.
Two things on my end. The C4 retreat overlaps with the mayor's state of the city. So if any of you want to miss the state of the city, you can go to the C4 retreat, find some other way. The other thing that's more real is tomorrow we have a hold on our calendar for the hillside opening. Is that still happening or?
And you didn't get a reminder today? Yeah,
It is
still
happening.
It is
What
happening.
time's the remarks, Mayor, at 10?
Oh, the remarks are at 10:45. It
10:45.
starts at 10. They are gonna have some tents because they know there's rain now. They get the one day. We need rain so much. Too bad it's the one day.
The remarks are at 10:45. I'll swing by on my way to work.
Pardon?
It's like a 3 hour deal.
No. Oh, did they show it as 10 to 1 on the calendar? Oh, I don't think it will be. It'll
Yeah,
be
it's a.
over by 11:30, 11:15.
Yeah.
They'll have coffee, they started at 10, that's like mixing time, and the remarks are at.
Do you have more, Will?
No, I was gonna say if you can send out, or if there was a,
I will try. I don't know if I received anything, but I will.
Oh,
see.
gosh.
What
I got an
You
email.
got one, mine
did,
got
okay.
cotton swimmers, yeah. I wanted, so next Tuesday, we had, and I can't remember though, I don't can remember you ever missing him, but we have Robert and Lisa will be, innocent. These two have confirmed. I need to know if you're gonna be there, because if you're not, we don't have a quorum. And we will cancel the meeting. Everything I think you rescheduled. I need to know.
The pressure.
I know.
Oh, the power.
Yeah, what's
Metro 2050 vision presentation. Guys, we're still on there. Community survey results, which we can reschedule. And then it's a lot, is a lot of proclamations. But we can figure out other ways to celebrate those proclamations. I think that without actually doing a you can see kind of where my bent is, but I'm happy to keep the meeting. And
This guy can read them?
no,
Yeah.
Steve was gonna read them.
Steve was gonna read the historical.
For
Yeah.
proclamation.
Yeah, I feel like if
Just
people,
go.
if community members are showing up for
We
the
should do it.
proclamations, we should be.
Okay, but I will need, we can't even start the work session until all three of you are there. Or called,
got
or
it.
someone's called in, so.
boss.
I read
It's a shared thing. My two friends who I text every Tuesday.
it. Monday meeting, Phil, like, need to be straight, and
Okay, so we're on next Tuesday. So it's gonna be great.
All right, I don't think I have any reports to give, but I will after tomorrow, because tomorrow I have both, DAC and SHS meetings, so it's a packed day of things tomorrow. So if I have anything to report from that, I will probably do a written report, an email, to be added to the packet for next week or whatever, I won't be there.
You won't be at, wait,
I'm gone next week.
oh, I thought you.
I'm gone next week, so I'm going to these two meetings tomorrow. DAC and SHS Regional Oversight Committee. And so if I have anything to report from those, I will submit a written report.
Thank you for still going to those.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's gearing up again, so, yeah. All right, anything else from anyone? Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Good, Jared.
Second.
It's been second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
You're too smart.
Do we adjourn our work session? But not for work session.
We still adjourn.
But we don't know.
No, the mayor just said.
The mayor